All right. Hey team, welcome to part 2 of our web development workshop recap. Today we'll actually finally get into developing our personal portfolio. So with that all said and done, let's get started. So here we have our HTML document right here. You might be like, hey Matt, what's up with all this information going on here? And it might look a little overwhelming since there's actually a few new things we haven't seen quite yet. So the first thing I want to point to is the second meta tag right here. So right in this area, we're actually telling our browser how we want to have our content be processed and also how we want to scale it down depending on the width of our device. So this will actually allow the content to be rescaled according to the device width. Here we actually see some Bootstrap for the first time, and this is actually how we import Bootstrap over into our HTML document. And along with here, within our body tags, you'll see there's what we call the Bootstrap core. Now you're like, hey Matt, what does this all do? And first off, how do I remember all this? There's a lot of source tags I need to remember. There's some attributes called integrity. It's a lot of information. Where do I get this? So I'm glad you asked, because there's actually a website provided by the developers of this, which contains a lot of information on not only how to use Bootstrap, but also how to properly import it to your website. So there's a website called getbootstrap.com, and you can imagine what the website does given from the name. And here there's a lot of information on documentation, such as how to use certain features, some examples, and also some templates you can use. Along with that, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, it will provide information on how to properly import Bootstrap into your HTML page. Here we see the link tag on bringing over the CSS that Bootstrap provides. Also here we see some scripting tags that allow us to animate certain pictures, provide slideshows, and allow us to do some cool things with videos. So what we do with the CSS link is we will copy and paste that over inside the head tag of our HTML page. We have it right up here in the comment called Bootstrap. And then for the Bootstrap scripting tags, you will copy and paste what is on getbootstrap.com and put that in the bottom of our body tags. And this will actually allow our site to use the Bootstrap framework. You may notice there is a particular order to this. So here we have the Bootstrap CSS, but you may notice that our CSS is right here, and you might ask, well Matt, does it matter if I copy this and put it on top of here or keep it the same? So actually it does matter. There is a significance to this. So the reason why we actually put our Bootstrap first is because we want to say if there's a certain style we want to apply from our own styling sheet, we will put that below the Bootstrap styling sheet because we actually want to override what Bootstrap has provided for us in case we want to give a certain attribute something that differentiates it that Bootstrap may already apply. Right below our Bootstrap tag, you also see a link referencing a certain font family that we want to use. Here, if we go over to my styling sheet, we are using a font called Montserrat, and this actually will copy the link to allow us using that font. And you might be like, hey Matt, how do I find these fonts? Can I just say I want to use Times New Roman or Comic Sans? So you could easily just specify in the font family I want to use those fonts. However, if there are fonts that are not supported, you actually will need to import that over. And fortunately, there's a website that allows you to do that called Google Fonts, fonts.google.com. Say there is a font that you really like on here. For instance, maybe you like Oswald. You will click the plus button. You'll add it to your families of fonts selected. Here, it'll actually provide you all the information you need onto properly embedding that font into your HTML page, but also so you can use it throughout the document. So here it gives us a link for the Oswald font. Also, it tells us how to specify it in CSS using the font family attribute. So as we see here, we have copy and pasted our font that we want to use, Montserrat. And here in our body tag, we are specifying in the font family attribute that we want to use the Montserrat font. And then here, right below our styling sheet, we are also linking to another page called Font Awesome. Not only does it import the built-in CSS, but it also allows us to use certain icons in our page. So say for instance we want to have some tabs for social media and we want to include those icons. So this will actually allow us to use icons for say Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. And then as we always see, we have our title for our tab. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing we will want to do actually is we want to be able to create a navigation menu for our users so we can go through various pages that we're going to have. So here we're just going to have a comment just denoting what section this is, so we'll call this navigation. And then right below that, we'll actually use the nav tag, and then we'll assign it some class names. So we'll assign the navbar class, so that way we know that this is a navbar. And we want this to be sticky in the sense that as we scroll down the page, it actually sticks to the top. So we're going to use the class called fixTop, so that will allow our navbar to stick to the top of our page. We want to use the default navbar, so we're going to specify navbar default. And then we want this navbar to take the full width of our browser, so we're going to say navbar expand large. Then we want to use a light color, so we'll say navbar light. And then lastly, we're going to specify a color we want. So in this case, I want to use red, so we're going to say background color danger. And as we save that right there, we open up our file, and we see that we have just a little red strip right here, which is our navbar. Currently there's nothing since we haven't added any links or any content to it yet, so let's get right to it. So inside this nav tag, we're going to specify a div tag. Here we will assign it some classes, so we'll say class navbar header, and we will specify deflex. This will actually allow this portion of the header to be responsive with the rest of the navbar, and we'll specify that this is a column. In here we'll specify a anchor tag, so that will be denoted by the A tag right there. And then here we'll assign it the class name navbar brand. This is actually where it'll contain an image, and also just in this case we'll be using our initials to be our brand name. And then we'll say it's a nav link. Then we will want to disable it, so this link will not take us anywhere. And then we will specify the hyperlink reference as null, which will be denoted by the hash character. Hash. So in my case, I'm just providing a template, so I'm going to use a generic name. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to be Bobby Sue today. So say I just want to use my initials, so I'll say BS as my brand name. Now we can exit out of here, open it up, and we see we have our brand name right here in the top left corner of our navbar. So now let's add some more information to this. So inside this div tag, we're going to make a button, and we'll actually see what it will do. So as we remember, we have to specify the type, so we need to say this is a button. And we want to assign a data target to it, so we will say data target navbar collapse, and data toggle on collapse. And then we will say class navbar toggle, then another class navbar toggler, and then we will do margin left auto align, so we will say ML auto, and that's it for all our classes. Then inside the button tag, we'll specify a span tag. Here we will assign it a class of navbar toggler icon. Again, we will specify another span. This will have the class name icon bar, and then we will copy and paste this 3 times. 3. There we go. Everything looks fine and dandy, and now we're going to see what this does. Save it. They're like, hey Matt, we just made a button. Where exactly is this? So if you notice, we actually specified some attributes that we haven't seen before. We have specified a data target and a data toggle. So the data target's actually specifying that whenever we collapse our screen, in terms of saying we minimize the browser or resize it, we want a certain action to happen. We want this data to be toggled when it's collapsed, so it will only show when we actually collapse our screen. Not literally, but make the browser smaller. So if we actually resize it, we will notice this is our button that has showed up, and you can see that this is where our icons have come from. So this is actually something that's really cool, and it's called a hamburger menu. I know some of you may be pretty hungry right now, but unfortunately this doesn't actually contain a menu of various types of hamburgers, but as you can quite tell from the actual button, it's just some lines that are stacked up on each other, and it almost looks like a hamburger. What this actually does is whenever, say, we're on a mobile device, or maybe resize our browser to that of a mobile device, it'll actually collapse all the contents within our navigation to be hidden underneath that, so that when we click this button, it'll actually display all the information. This is actually a really powerful tool on helping keep a website that looks clean on mobile devices, so that all the information can be condensed but also presented in an aggregated manner so that it is not too overwhelming for the user. So we will go back to our HTML, and then we will actually put some content into our nav menu. So here we'll specify a div tag. We will assign it the ID of Navbar collapse. And we'll give it the class name of collapse Navbar hyphen collapse. And then we want to justify our content. So we'll say justify content start. Then we will actually specify an unordered list which will contain our links. So we will say class nav bar nav. Save that, and then we will actually put some list items into this unordered list. So we will say class nav item, and then here we'll put an anchor tag. We'll give it a class name of nav link because we want this to be a link to some certain section or maybe a different web page in our navigation menu. Then we'll specify a destination. In this case, we'll give it a hash for nowhere. And since this is going to be our personal portfolio, we're going to have this be our home page, so this will actually redirect us to our home section. So we go right here, we refresh, and we see we have a new nav link in our nav menu called home. And as you see, it takes us to nowhere since we haven't specified a destination yet. There's actually going to be 5 other sections, so we're going to copy and paste this right here and just paste it 5 more times. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll just clean this up a little bit. There we go. So the other sections we're going to have a home section, an about, a skills section, skills, and we'll have a section for our resume, projects, and then a contact section. So if you notice already in my folder, I actually have a resume on here, which is not mine. It's a template I pulled off, but you can put your resume in there if you want. We can actually specify in our resume link that we want this to take us to the resume we have in our folder. So we'll say the href as resume.pdf, but we want to make sure that this opens up in a different tab. So we're going to specify the target as underscore blank. Save that, go back to our page. Here we have the 5 other sections we have added. We can click on our resume, and here it will take us to the provided resume, which in this case you will put your own in that folder. So let's go back to our document. And one important thing that's for networking, and for those of you who may have not gone to the LinkedIn workshop, you can actually put some other social medias on your website, but more importantly, you should put your LinkedIn since this is your personal portfolio. So here we're going to specify another unordered list, but this will contain a list of other social medias or maybe blogs you might have. And we'll give the class of navbar nav, and then we'll say we want this to be to the right of our navbar, so we'll say navbar right. And Then we will make the margin left auto. Then here we will specify our list item, and we'll give this class of nav item, and then we'll specify an anchor tag in here, and then we will specify another hyperlink reference. For now we'll just make it nowhere. Then we'll give a target of blank. And then we will specify the icon we want to use. So using our I tag, we will specify a class name for it. It'll be FA LinkedIn square. And this will actually put a LinkedIn icon to the right of our nav menu. As we go right back here, refresh. Here we have our LinkedIn icon. As you can see, it currently just opens up a new page since we specified a target blank. So here you can actually have it redirect to LinkedIn, in this case your personal LinkedIn. So I'm just going to put the link to just LinkedIn, www.linkedin.com/ and then save that, go right here, and this will take us to LinkedIn. So we've completed our navigation menu. However, we want to reposition some items just so it's a little bit more cleaner look, but also change the color of our text so it's a little bit easier to read just since we have red on black. And we also want to make the color of our LinkedIn icon consistent with the rest of the items in our nav menu. So we're going to switch on over to our CSS. Here we've specified the font family we want. Here I have specified the font family that I want to use, along with some predefined margins and padding. So the first thing we want to do for our navigation menu is select the Navbar header class, and we want to give it a padding of 0, and then we will select the Navbar class and give it a padding right of 16 pixels, and we refresh this. Here we have spaced out not only our brand name but also our LinkedIn icon from the actual navigation links, but also brought it a little bit closer to the edge of our screen. Switch right on over. Then we want to change the color of our Navbar brand so that it's a little bit easier to read. So we will select the Navbar brand class. We will specify the color of it to be white. And we'll assign padding left of 0, padding right of also 0. Then we want our font size to be 20 pixels. And then we will apply the Montserrat font, and we will apply the Montserrat font family. So Montserrat and sans serif, there we go. Switch on right over, and we'll see that our Navbar brand has shifted closer since we have changed the padding to be 0, but also we've actually changed the color of our Navbar brand so it's a lot easier to read. Next thing we will style is we'll actually style the links in our navigation menu. So if you remember that they were all defined using an anchor tag, so we're going to select our anchor tag, but one thing that is unique is that we assigned the navlink class, so we want to select all anchor tags that use the navlink class as shown here. And then we want to assign the color to be white. However, because these are links, we want to override the predefined CSS for Bootstrap, so we're going to specify that this is important, which is going to tell the browser that I want to apply my defined style sheet to the document. Switch on right over, and we see now that our nav links have changed colors and it's a lot easier to read. Next thing we want to fix is actually our LinkedIn icon, because as you can see here, it still doesn't match the rest of the document. Also, it's a little hard to read. So we're going to switch on right over. We're going to select the Navbar class along with the nav item, and we're going to look at the icon tag. And we want to give it a font size of 18 pixels, so it's a lot easier for us to read. Switch on over, and then we will see that our icon has become a little bit bigger. In the same time, we will want to specify our color to be white, and then we will assign the important attribute to it. And as you can see, our icon has now changed to match the rest of the nav menu. So now that we've installed all of our navigation menu, it provides us the links that we need. We've got it to our LinkedIn and our brand. The next thing we put is our main content. So we're going to switch on over to our HTML document again. Break it down a little bit. We're going to put a comment called main, just so we know that this contains our main content. So here, the look we're going to go for actually is we're going to place an image right inside here, just so we can have a little bit of a background and add some more styling and personality to our website. So here we're going to specify a div tag, and you're going to assign it the class name of container fluid. Here we're going to define a row using the div tag with class row, and then another div tag with the class name of column. We'll specify medium for laptops, and then we will provide a heading of heading 1. We'll put our name in here, so I'm going to put Bobby Sue. And then right below that, I'm going to specify a paragraph tag, and I'll put super awesome engineer. And then inside of this, we will specify an ID for our row class. We'll call this home. Inside of the row, looking at the div child with the class name column 12, we will specify that we want to add an image to this, so we'll put an image class, and we want to make sure this image is fluid so it will resize accordingly with the browser. And then now we have our container, which contains this information. Go right back here, refresh. Here we have super awesome engineer. You can't see Bobby Sue since it's covered by the Navbar, since we made it sticky top. Now we're going to go over to our CSS, and we're actually going to add our background image to this. So we will go over to selecting our image class that we have specified, and we will give it a background image, and specify URL, give the destination, which is in the image folder. And in my case, it's called Windows XP.jpg, and we want to make sure that this image fits the entire screen, so we'll say background size cover. Then we want to make sure that the image does not have any repeats, so we'll say background repeat, no repeat. Then we want to position this image to be centered, so background position, center. And then we want to add some padding, so we'll give it 150 pixels just so that we make sure that it fits the entire width of our navbar. We go here, and here we have our background image, and now you can see our text as it's no longer being hidden by the navbar. So we'll switch on right over, and we'll add a class name to our h1 tag, and we'll call it class head, and then we will assign class of the paragraph tag called head2. Going to our CSS, we will select the head class, and we'll assign the color of the text to be white. And then in head2, we will also make the color white. However, we're going to add a little bit of style to our head2. So inside head2, we're going to give a border bottom that is 1 pixel, solid white. And then we want the padding of the bottom to be 5 pixels. Before we refresh the page, this will actually make the text white, but it'll also add a little underline to the super awesome engineer line, just to add, again, a little bit more personality to our website. And here we go. The reason why this line actually extends all the way out here is because if we actually go into our debugger, we will see that this entire paragraph tag right here takes up the width of the column that we specified, which if we select our image, we can see that the blue box inside the green is actually the row that we specified, which explains why the actual underlined border will take up the full width of that row. So we can close out of our debugger, go right back to here. So right below that, we will specify a container, so div.container. Inside that, we will add a breakpoint, and then we'll give a heading with text center so we can center our text. And we want to add an ID to this, so we'll call this about, since this will be our about us section. Here we will add the strong tag to make our text bold, and we'll call this welcome. And then add a break. And then right below that break, we will specify a div tag with class name row. Inside that row, we will specify some columns, so we'll say col medium 12. And then here we will add an image, so we'll use our image tag. And then we'll give the ID name of personal. We'll call it class image fluid. And then we'll give it a rounded corner, so we'll say rounded. And then we'll provide the source, so we'll say source image. And then we'll use our portrait that we have. Here you can just use a personal image that you may have on your computer. So I specify column medium 12, however, we actually want to position some content which to the right of our image, which our image will be placed right about here where my cursor is circling. So we'll say we want to take up a width 4, so we'll say col large 4. Save that, refresh, and here we have our welcome statement, but also we have an image. So now we will add the section that will go right next to our image, which will contain the about us information. So we'll specify a div with class name column large 8. And here you can just write some information about yourself. So I will say I am Bobby Sue. And I'll say I'm a great engineering student at Texas A&M University. This is my first website in a personal portfolio. To gain experience in web development. Add a breakpoint to their text, and I'll say my interests are X, Y, and Z. And then add some breaks to that, and then we'll say SHPE is life. So we'll go right back to here, refresh, and now we should see some content about Bobby Sue right here to the right of our image. Here we go. Now we see I'm Bobby Sue, great engineering student, Texas A&M, first website, interest are XYZ, SHPE is life. I agree with you too, Bobby. SHPE is life. So after that, we will add some breaks. So we'll put a break right outside of our div, make sure everything's closed off properly. There we go. And then here comes our very next section, which will contain our skills. So we'll say div, and we'll give class name item. Inside this item, we'll give a child of div tag, and we'll call it class container. And then we'll add a breakpoint to that. And we'll add an h1 tag with the class text center so we can center our text. And inside that, we will have some bold text using the strong tag called skills. And then here we will assign the ID called skills to our heading tag. And then right under that, we will specify an h6 tag. And we will say it is text center. We'll say class text center. And then we will actually want to italicize our text. So we will use a tag called EM, which just italicizes our text. And we'll say our skills are listed in descending order. Listed in descending order. We'll save that, go back to our page, refresh, Here we added some breaks. Now we have our skills section right here, and now we have our italicized text listed in descending order. So let's say Bobby, since he's a multidisciplinary engineer, we'll say he has some programming language experience, so we'll specify a heading 4 tag. We want the text to be center, so we'll say class text center. And then we will list our languages section. Right inside that, we will specify a row, so we'll say div.row. And then we will give it some columns, so we'll say call of size 3. And then we'll call the class name language that we're working with. And then we will want to boldface this, so again we'll use strong, and we'll put Python. So we're pretty confident that we're really good at Python, so right below that we're going to put a progress bar to measure our level of proficiency at Python. So here we're going to specify a div tag. We're going to assign it class of call size 9. Inside that we're going to provide another div class of class progress, so div.progress. And then within that, we're going to provide a progress bar class. So we'll say div.progress bar. Inside that, we will give it a color of background danger. We'll give the role of progress bar. And then we'll add some styling to it, style, and then we'll change the width. You know what? Bobby's pretty confident that he's really good at Python, but he's pretty humble today. So we're going to say he's 90% proficient at Python. And we can just adjust this real quick. And switch right on over to our document. And here we have our progress bar. And here it shows he is 90% proficient at Python. Here we're going to actually change the background a little bit just to add a little bit of contrast. So we're going to select our item class, and then inside our item class we are going to change the background color using RGBA, and we're going to assign the values 100, 100, 100, and 0.2, and this should be a fairly light gray. And along with that we want to assign background size cover. We'll save that, refresh the page, and as we can see now, we have assigned a light gray background just to add some contrast and highlight different sections. And now we have listed our Python. However, we want this to be a little bit closer since it's kind of far out from the actual progress bar. So we will select our language class. So from there, we will assign the text align to be justify, and then we will align the last bit of the text. So we'll say text align last, and we will give it right, so it will be hugging the progress bar. We refresh this, and now we see that the actual skill is sort of, for lack of a better word, hugging the progress bar itself. And we'll switch right back to our HTML. And now we will list some other skills that Bobby Sue has. So right outside of this row containing our first skill, we'll essentially just copy and paste this. Then specify our next skill. Even it out just for readability. So one thing we can also say too is, say Bobby actually watched this video and gained some pretty good knowledge in web development. So he's going to put HTML as one of his skills. However, being that this is the first time he's done this, he's not so confident this time, but he feels pretty good. So he's going to say he's 60% proficient in HTML. If we go right back here, now we have a new progress bar for his proficiency in HTML. Along with that, he's also gained skills in CSS. So we'll put CSS 3 in our skill. And here we'll say he feels a little bit more comfortable. He likes the visual side of it and styling a bit more. So we'll say he's 65% confident. And then lastly, we will add Bootstrap is one of our skills. And you know what? He's feeling really good. He really likes the fact that Bootstrap does a lot of the work for us. And he's going to say, you know what? I'm 85% confident in this. So save our document, refresh our page, and now we should have two new skills. So now we have CSS and Bootstrap added onto here. And again, following the same principles of Bobby being a multidisciplinary engineer, aside of programming languages, he also has some software experience. So Bobby likes to do a little bit of mechanical engineering work, so he also has some pretty good experience with SolidWorks. He is extremely confident that he can just knock this out of the ballpark, and he's 100% confident in his level of proficiency. And then lastly, we'll say he also uses Fusion 360. However, this isn't his most favorite bit of software, so he's going to say, you know what, I'm about 55% proficient in this. Go back to our page, refresh, and now we see we have two new skills, SolidWorks and Fusion 360. And then right from there, we will add a heading 4, and we will call this the class text center, and we will call this a list of some technologies that Bobby is proficient with. Again, we are just going to be listing some skills so we can actually copy and paste what we have previously done. So here we have a skill right here. Again, just change the spacing out for readability. And then, since Python is one of his skills, we also get a better idea of some classes he's taking. So he's taking Engineering 102, and his section happens to use PyCharm. So he's pretty good in using that IDE. However, he's going to be a little bit modest. So he'll say he's about 75% proficient in that. And then here we have added our technology section. And here we have his level of proficiency with PyCharm. And then we will copy and paste this again. And this time, he's got some familiarity with another text editor, so he's going to put Visual Studio Code. And here we're going to change the width again. So we're going to say about 50% proficiency. Go right back to our document, refresh. And now we have our new skill in Visual Studio Code. So from there, we're going to add on our next section, and we're going to look at the projects that we have done. We're going to collapse the item class we have made, and we are going to create a container class inside of a div tag. So we'll say div.container, add a breakpoint, and then here we're going to say heading 1, and we want to assign text center as our class. We want to give the ID name of projects. And then inside this we'll have boldface, so we'll use the strong tags, and then this will contain the title projects. Go back to our page, refresh, and here we have our project section. So following the same principle of listing the skills and whatnot, we are going to create a row class inside of our div tag. Inside there, we will specify a column of size 3. And we want the text to be justify, so we'll say text justify. And we will space this out, and we will list the name of this project in boldface, and we will call this aerofoil analysis. Then we will also assign the class name of project to this. And then here we'll actually attach a picture of the project that Bobby did. So we'll say div. Inside there we will give a class name of column size 3. Then we will attach our image of our project that we did. So we'll say class, give image fluid. And we want to round this image, so we'll use the rounded class, and we'll provide the source. And then we will go into our image folder, and we will use our aerospace project that Bobby did. And we go right back here. So now we should have the name of our project right here in the bottom left, and the picture of the project kind of towards the middle. And as we can see, we have the name of our project along with the project picture. So we're going to use the remaining space we have. So we're going to say div.column of size 6, and this will contain our project description. So we will just say some project description. And now we can see we have our project description, and we're actually going to apply the same styling to the project name. So we're going to go into our style sheet and select the project class, and we will align the text to be justify, and also apply text align last right. However, if you recalled from the lecture portion, we can actually group these selectors together because we're actually applying the same style to the class. So if we comment this out, we could easily just say select the language tag and also the project tag and apply these styles, and we will see that this will be hugging our image. There we go. So we will add some other projects that Bobby has done, so we can just copy and paste this section we have added, add some spacing, paste it in. So we'll say Bobby's done a very diverse set of projects given his diverse set of skills he has. So not only did he do some aerofoil analysis, but he also does a bit of work in chemical engineering. So he also did a heat exchange optimization project. Here we'll change the image source. So the image he uses is called Chen project, and again he will contain a project description. And lastly, he's also done a little bit of work as a civil engineer, in which we will call the project name load analysis. So we will apply the project name he's done here in the image, so we will say his Steven project, which is called house design, and it will contain a project description. And once we refresh this, we will have two new sections added. So we have his heat exchange optimization project and his load analysis that he's done, along with some project descriptions. The last section we will be adding to this is our contact. So we will close our container we have made right here, and then we will make another div of class item, and then in that item we will have a container, div.container, add a break, then we will add a heading with text center, so h1.textCenter. We will give the ID of contact, and then we will use the strong tag, and we will call this contact me, so that future employers who are interested in Bobby can reach out to him. And then we will add a breakpoint right after that heading. Now inside that container, we will provide a div tag with class row. And then we will say div.row of size 12. And we'll add just a little bit of information just for the employer to see. So we'll say that Bobby says, feel free to reach out to me and talk about my engineering work along with my involvement in SHPE. Otherwise, if you just want to chit chat, that's cool too. Then we will save this, go right here, and now we should have a section called Contact Me, and along with a little description just of Bobby speaking about what he wants employers to potentially do and discuss with him. So right outside of that, we will specify another breakpoint, and then we will give a div tag with the class of text center, and then we will place a button here. So we'll use the button tag. We'll specify type equals button, and then we'll say class is button, and we want to give the color of background color danger, and we want to assign an attribute called NoUnder. We'll actually look at this a little bit more. And then here we will put an anchor tag, and then Inside that anchor tag, it will say contact via email. We'll save this. And now we should be having a button right here. However, it does not do anything quite yet. So one thing we want to do is add a breakpoint at the end just so there's a little bit more spacing and so that the page does not just stop right at the bottom of the button. So we'll add a breakpoint outside of our item class. And then there we go. We'll actually need to move that inside so that styling is still applied and we extend that breakpoint. So we're actually going to put it at the very bottom right inside of our item class. Refresh. There we go. And so for our NoUnder, we are actually going to go over to our styling sheet, select the NoUnder tag, and then inside there, we will specify that we want our color to be white. And along with that, on NoUnder, we want, so when we hover our cursor, so we'll say NoUnder :hover, and we again will apply the color of white. We save this, refresh, and now our button text has turned white. However, we haven't quite been able to contact yet, so we're actually going to need to specify a action we want this button to do. So you may have noticed we placed an anchor tag, so we are actually going to put a hyperlink reference. And this hyperlink reference will actually reroute us to a Gmail page to send an email. However, this link is kind of long, and I don't expect this to be something that you guys will remember. I most certainly do not remember this myself, so I usually have to reference some online material or some previous work I've done. However, if you look up on Mail To on button click, there is actually a provided script where you can copy and paste this URL right here for your hyperlink reference and specify where you want this email to be rerouted to. So here we see, okay, it's going to open up Gmail, and here this is going to specify who do I want this email to send to. So it says someone@gmail.com. In this case, we're going to set it to where when we open this, that the button click will send an email to TAMU SHPE, and we want it to open up this Gmail page on a different tab, so we'll specify the target as blank. We go right back to our page, refresh, and now when we click on this button, it'll take us to Gmail, and it'll allow us to send an email to TAMU SHPE, and you can send an email saying, subject line, thank you for all your hard work. And then just put some content for the body, and then you can send this email. One thing you may have noticed now is since we actually provided a hyperlink to this, the text has actually changed to blue, and that there is an underline now when we hover over this, and this is because we have actually provided a live link with the destination. So we're actually going to fix this with a class called NoUnder. So we implemented it right here, however, it's no longer being applied because the styling is being applied to the button itself, but not the actual anchor tag. So we're actually going to put the class inside of our anchor tag. We're going to say NoUnder. So now our styling will be applied to our button. Now we have a button with the text in white. However, there is still an underline underneath it, which we want to fix. So we'll go right back to here. And because this occurs when we hover our cursor, we're going to want to go into our .NoUnder hover class selector. And then we're going to say Textdecoration, which is what happens when you hover over the text and you see that underline. And we're going to say Textdecoration none. So now when we refresh the page and you hover over this button, there will no longer be an underline, but rather just a live link that will take you to Gmail to send an email to whoever you specify the recipient to be. So all in all, the website is complete. However, we're just going to style some bits just to make sure everything is formatted correctly. So we're going to actually add a breakpoint at the end of our project section. So we're going to go right back to our HTML. We're going to close off our contact, open up our container, which contains projects, and we will add a breakpoint. And we will go back to our skills section, go towards the bottom, and then we will add a breakpoint. Refresh, and now we have a breakpoint here and a breakpoint there. However, there's one important thing that's not working yet. We can't quite navigate through our website. So you may have noticed that we've been actually specifying IDs, and while I did mention that IDs are something that should be used for a unique element within your page, we can actually use IDs to help navigate through our website, which we can use ID navigation in our nav links. So if we go to our home and specify that we want our hyperlink reference to go to the ID with the name home, we can just say hyperlink reference equals to the name hash home. And the same goes with about, so we'll say hash about, hash skills, hash projects, and so on, and then contact. Then we just gotta make sure all the names match so that it goes to the proper destination. So we here have contact, so that looks good. ID projects, that looks good. And then we have ID of name skill right up here. Skills. And we have about, so contact, projects, skills, about, home, so everything looks good. So now when we refresh the page, we can actually go to the various sections. So here this takes us to about, takes us to our skills, projects, contact, and then we can go right back to home. Now we see our resume is working. And the really cool thing about Bootstrap, as I previously mentioned, is it actually does a lot of the work for us. So we actually didn't have to specify much in terms of the responsiveness. So if we actually minimize this, everything will readjust accordingly, and so our website is completely responsive. So here we still have all our text position in the right areas. In our image, we'll actually take up the specified width we want, which we specified that it would take up of width 12 on mobile devices. And as we can see, everything just stacks up right on top of each other and looks very, very pretty. It has a very nice, clean, modern look to it. And here we can click on our hamburger menu and it'll actually display all the contents of our navigation. So we can click on home, it'll take us to home, our about section, skills, projects, contact, and also open up our resume. There we go. And also open up our LinkedIn. So you may notice that for some of y'all that may be pretty nitpicky, that maybe you want some of the project names to actually be centered, along with the images being slightly smaller, and also lining up these skill names so that on mobile devices we still have a consistent look, but that it still maintains a certain level of professionality to this. Unfortunately, there is a method to help accomplish this task. So if we switch on over to our styling sheet and go to the very bottom, so we may notice that our image looks a little big, so we can actually specify that we want our styling to be different for various types of devices. So if we go to our styling sheet and we specify a keyword media, and we want to say for mobile devices, we want to say at a max width of 750 pixels, we want to apply these stylings for mobile devices. So we will select our image, so we'll select the personal ID, and then we will assign a width of 100%. We'll use the keyword important. Then we want a max width of 200 pixels, again appending the keyword important, so 200 pixels, important. Then we want our height to be auto, so it will adjust according to the viewport width. And if we go right back to here, save it, we'll notice our image is smaller, however, it's actually a little off-center, so we're going to need to go right back into our HTML and see where the image is. So here we have our image. However, while we did specify a column, we didn't specify its position for when it takes up the full width of our browser. So we will want to specify this column to have text center, so we center it. But also on mobile devices, we want it to take up the full width. So we're going to say column size extra small, width 12. we go right back to here, our image will now be centered. Along with that, we're going to want to fix our skills right here so that they're positioned to the left, which they are hugging the front of the progress bar, and also adjust so that the images of our projects are a little bit smaller, and also have the project titles be centered over the image. So we're going to go back to our style sheet. Now we're gonna fix up our project. So we're gonna select the project class, and then we're gonna specify text align center. And we want to append the keyword important so we can override our styling. And we want to align the text align last to be centered again with the keyword important. Make sure we have added the project class to our projects. And here we have projects, so we got our project class, all good. Now we will save, and now we see that our project names have centered over our images, and now we just need to fix the actual project image. So we're going to want to style our images for the projects because they actually take up quite a bit of space. They don't need to take up as much as we're seeing here, so we're going to actually make them a little bit smaller. So inside of our HTML, we're going to apply a class name image to the image tag inside of our projects. So image, and then one more. There we go. And here we're going to go over to our styling sheet, select our image class. We want the width to be, let's say, about 75%. Then we want to append the important keyword. We want our max width to be about 200 pixels. And then we want the height to be auto. And append the keyword important. Save it. Refresh. Now we see that our images have been applied. However, we need to apply a special image class because our image class is for our background cover that we specified earlier right up here, which is why we see this up in here. So to make this a little more unique, we're going to call this is going to be really creative, we're going to call this class image2 for our projects. So now when we go back to here, image2, and refresh, we will see now that our images have gotten smaller. There we go. Now we have the same exact issue as we did with our personal picture. So now we will need to apply a text center to the column which contains our image. So we just apply text center here, and we can copy and paste that into our other columns with our images. There we go, text center, and then just one more. We refresh, and now we can see that our images are centered within our columns. However, we can make this a little bit bigger, so we'll have it take up a width of 100%. And we'll say it takes up still 200 pixels. And there we go. I actually want to change that a little bit. We'll double the width, so we'll say 400 pixels. There we go. Not too big, still readable. So now that looks all good. Now we're going to adjust our skills. So we're going to select, so we called them with the class lang. Here we have lang. Now we're going to go into our styling sheet, select the lang class. We want to apply a text align of justify, and we're going to want to overwrite this. So again, we'll use the important keyword, and we want to align the text align last to the left so that it hugs the very left side of our progress bar. We save this, refresh, and now we have our skills towards the left. And now we have a completely clean looking website. But however, we might want to resize this image just because it looks a little too big relative to everything else. So we are going to go into our CSS again, and this time we will select our image class. So we gave it a padding of 150 pixels. Let's trim that down a little bit to about 100 pixels. We'll refresh, and there we go. Everything is resized, and now this looks very appropriate for a mobile device. So just to make sure everything looks right, we'll actually open up the Chrome debugger. So function F12, and we will actually check out the various devices. So, okay, we see that it is still responsive on a Galaxy, which is good. Pixel 2 XL, still responsive. Let's check out the iPhone. Alright, we're still looking pretty responsive, so that's really good. Let's see. And then iPad Pro, everything still lines up accordingly. Again, we can get a little bit more nitpicky and specify a bit more in our HTML, like how do we want certain elements to line up, or how much width do we want these columns to take space. However, I will leave this to you as a little fun challenge, accomplishing the goal of optimizing your page to various devices on here. So you can see it looks pretty good on iPhone, but let's get right back to the laptop version and close off our debugger. But this concludes our web dev workshop recap, and we have a fully functional website now that you can use to highlight your skills, projects, and also put some contact information, and also have a resume just to maintain a personal portfolio, which will not only be great for monitoring your personal growth as a professional and student, but also allow employers to see the skills that you have gained along the way in your time in university, but also through various internships and eventually when you go on to work in industry. I just wanted to say thank you all very much for taking the time to watch these videos and not only giving me the opportunity to work on my teaching abilities, but to allow you to develop technical skills that are not taught at Texas A&M and that have various applications and projects you can encounter in school and in industry. I hope everyone was able to take something away new or reinforce previous knowledge over the covered material. Hopefully this gave a solid foundation to pursue work on other websites for student orgs or for personal purposes. Again, if you have any questions and want to learn more, please reach out to me during our SHPE office hours and I'll be more than glad to help. Lastly, I hope you all have a great day and keep on working hard. Thanks and gig 'em.